whenever you're typing out a resume and you're
Yeah.
submitting to a design job, that you are doing personal branding. Like that
Right.
is what that's like when if your resume looks like it goes with your business card and it looks like it goes with your online portfolio, which you need to have,
Right.
that's personal branding. So even if it's really basic, that's what you're doing.
Right.
Uh, so I guess in that sense, it is important to just make it look like you know what you're doing. It doesn't have to be the most creative brand ever or anything like that. But if you're a freelancer, then that's when it's, to me, especially important.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the Design Rescue Show. I am your host, David Block. And today I am happy to welcome an incredibly talented illustrator, artist, and designer working under the name Lost Rest. Joseph Melancon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm hearing like applause in my head right now. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well,
Thank
I
you so
appreciate
much.
your time and I appreciate you being here for the show. And what this is basically a behind the scenes tour of your career. And what I'd like to do is start at the very beginning and ask you questions about, your influence and your schooling. And so to begin, I would like to have you, if you could, describe your current role running your design business, Lost Rest, and what are your day-to-day sort of responsibilities as an artist and a business owner?
My day-to-day operations will vary greatly depending on what day it is.
Yeah.
I there are 2 days out of the week where I'm just watching my kids, so I'm not even working on those days
Mhm.
for the full day. And when I am, it's uh, freelance illustration, freelance graphic design, uh, and then personally, I'm working on some narrative things, like comics and things like that, that I'm starting to do more and more of, making more books.
Mhm.
Uh, and then I'm starting to do more live art and more fine art type of things,
Nice.
selling more originals. So I'm just like always expanding what I'm doing, and it keeps changing. So
I
it's
see.
not very consistent right
Got it.
now, but I'm just doing what I got to do. Uh, yeah, and then selling products. I forget that too. I make things like apparel and prints and stickers and stuff like that. I sell them live at markets. I have them in one or two stores,
Mhm.
and then I do have an online shop that is kind of dormant right now, but it's there if anyone wants to go look at it.
I'll, I'll make sure I get a link to that in the description for you for sure.
Yeah, I'll try to update it before then too.
Okay.
With some new stuff. That'd be good.
That's great. And so you now going back a little bit in time, you studied graphic design at Troy University.
Yes.
And so I'd like to know, first of all, what inspired you? Was there something that inspired you to want to be a graphic designer, or was it just you just wanted to take the next step in your design career, or how did that start for you?
Uh, well, for me, growing up, I was always drawing, and I know that people probably say this all the time, but it's true. Kids draw, like children draw. It's just something you do, whether it's like through your education or just for fun. You're always coloring and drawing, and then at some point, you sort of wind that down while you're getting into other interests or something. Unless you're people like me and probably like you too, who just never stopped that sort of interest and just kept it up.
Right.
So that combined with all of my pop culture interests that me and everyone else that were growing up in the 90s had, uh, through video games and TV and cartoons and stuff like that. I just knew I wanted to be a part of something creative and maybe getting into something related to entertainment or something. I didn't know what it was. All I
Right.
knew was I wanted to do something creative. Uh, but the reason I ended up going to Troy was not through the design program. It was through music. I was
Oh,
a band kid from middle school and high school, and that and then art were like my things. So the thing that made me end up going to Troy was it was an in-state school that was inexpensive, and it had the best band program that I had ever seen. And
Mhm.
that right there was pretty much enough to make me want to go to that school.
Got
And
it.
so I didn't know what my major was going to be, but I knew I wanted to be in that band.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that was a great experience. I was in the band, and I ended up becoming a music major by the time I was a sophomore, probably.
Mhm.
Um, and that involved a whole lot of practice and private instructions. I was in like every ensemble you could be in: jazz ensemble, symphonic band, marching band, like and and over time I realized that the time commitment was really intense. Um, Partially because the credit hours you got 1 credit hour for every one of these ensembles, and yet you're doing all sorts of extra time via rehearsals outside of the regular class hours. You
Right.
would be traveling for performances,
Mhm.
and music is one of my great passions, so I loved it. But at all the while, I was taking art classes because I knew I needed to take advantage of that while I was in the university environment.
Mhm.
So at a certain point, I just switched gears. I think it was my junior year or so. I I switched gears and started focusing more on the visual arts, and then changed my major to what we would call graphic design. Troy called it something else. It's called design technology and innovation.
Ah,
It's like a bachelor's of science certificate thing. It's kind of strange how it was set up, but essentially, it was a graphic design degree that I ended up getting. And that was really just through learning about it while I was at school. Like I didn't know what graphic design was going into college.
right.
Um, but I started meeting people who did know what it was, and I started taking a couple of design classes, and one thing led to another, and I just found a whole new passion. Um, just discovering this whole other aspect of visual arts that I didn't really notice before.
Right.
Um, but once you start designing and you see your designs like in print for the first time, it kind of, I don't know, it does something to you. It gets you.
Right.
So I was kind of hooked from there.
Nice.
But there's just
And
something about like seeing like the practical applications of these like tendencies you have. I don't
yeah.
know. It kind of like was like merging all these worlds for me somehow.
Yeah. I hear you.
I don't know.
I hear you. So if you take a look back at your time in college,
Mhm.
was there? Let me put it a different way. What were the biggest takeaways that you learned from that entire time that you still integrate into your creative process today?
Uh, well, there are a lot of practical things, of course,
Right.
that I learned throughout. Um, but there is one major theme that I would say that I learned from college, which was to be not self-sufficient so much, but self-motivating. Like
Right.
you really get out of your education what you put into it. That's the greatest lesson that I learned. Nothing was going to happen for me. Uh, like the teachers weren't going to make me a great designer. I had to put in the effort myself, and that was something I'm still learning about now. But I don't know. That was the biggest lesson I would say that I learned in college. And then part of that is learning to take advantage of the environment that you're in. So it's not to say that I wouldn't have arrived at that without the university experience, but being in that environment um, just helped me to realize that just because I'm in this place with these very knowledgeable people and great designers and everything doesn't mean that that's going to make me good at what I want to do.
Right.
I have to put in the work to
Yeah.
do that, and I'm
Yeah.
still doing that now. Like even my senior thesis fell way short of what I wanted it to be because I hadn't lived up to
Yeah.
that lesson I was still learning at that time. So
I
uh,
see.
yeah, I'm still
Awesome.
learning it now.
You're right.
Yeah,
It's a lifelong learning lesson. Absolutely. A
yeah,
learning experience.
yeah.
Fantastic. So now you worked at Columbus State University as a graphic designer.
Hmm.
Was that the first job out of college?
That was my first like salaried design job. Yeah, I was
Okay.
doing freelance right after college
Yeah.
while working at some retail stores, including Michael's.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
and I was living with some friends, and I was kind of struggling to get work and to figure out what I was supposed to be doing. So in that sense, I felt very unprepared
Right.
after college. I did try to get an internship at one point, but that didn't go my way.
Mm.
So there was a good like year and a half, I would say, of me just kind of floundering and trying to get work and trying to just figure things out.
Just submitting
Uh,
resumes and just
yeah,
wherever you
but
could.
all the while that was like a test, I guess.
Right.
That's a test to see if you're still going to pursue this thing that you say you want to do. Are you going to take the time and improve your portfolio? Are
Right.
you going to keep trying to get clients even though you've been screwed over by a couple? So you learn some hard lessons, but it makes you better at what you do if you stick to it.
Yeah.
And so eventually, I did get a job at Columbus State,
Mhm.
which was not that far from where I was living at the time, which was Dothan, Alabama.
Oh, okay.
Um, so I started off working in the print shop there. It was like a 30-hour a week job, so it was technically part-time, so I wasn't getting benefits and stuff.
Mhm.
But it was a huge step up from where I was
Yeah.
before. Um, and I was doing graphic design and customer service, and I was like printing stuff off for customers and doing some bindery stuff and cutting, and so I it was a really good learning experience in so many ways, uh, to see the practical side of design and how it works in the real world, and what regular people expect and what they know and don't know. It was a really good learning experience.
Good.
So a year doing that,
Mhm.
uh, the in-house graphic designer, which Columbus State only had one of at the time, they still do, I think. I'm not sure. Um, they really only had one full-time in-house graphic designer in their marketing department,
Mhm.
and he was exiting that job after I was there for a year. And my supervisor encouraged me to apply to that position because they communicate directly with the print shop and do projects together. They said if you were up there, that would be great for us because we like what you do here and we could like make all this better. So that was really awesome to just get that encouragement to go after
Right.
that. And so I did that and got the job, and just in time to have my first kid
Hey.
for with my wife. And
That's awesome.
so getting those benefits right in just in time was like
Right.
crazy. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's
and
great. That's good timing.
yeah, yeah. And then I stayed there for I want to say 9 years total or something like that.
Wow.
Uh, and it was just what we needed financially. Like it was just enough, and I was working with great people that I really enjoyed being around. That was the
Nice.
biggest reason I stayed there as long as I did.
Excellent.
Um,
Did over that 9-year period, did your responsibilities change at all, or were you basically doing the same thing throughout that time?
um, hmm, I would say they did expand over time.
Yeah.
The title didn't really change though,
Right.
um, and the pay didn't really change, but I just sort of like did what needed to be done,
Right.
I guess. So
I see.
I guess they started trusting me with more things the longer I was there. But my job, it was like anything that was print related, I was doing, uh, working for uh, in-house clients, I guess. So it could be from the president's department, like designing his invitations for some big soiree or something like that, or it
Yeah.
could be designing some co-branding for an event that was happening, or it varied greatly. There was a lot of regulating and providing logos to people, tweaking things. There was a few times where I was redesigning a couple of logos. Uh, I don't know. There was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a long 9 years. It was good though. I it was just more learning about being a professional and learning how to communicate and interface with clients and
Right.
uh, what I really learned was how to educate someone who's not a designer. That
Mm,
was a huge thing for me is learning how to communicate something that a non-designer could actually understand,
right.
and then meeting them halfway on what they need, because they're coming to you for your expertise, but they
Mhm.
have needs too. Like you're the whole reason that I mean, they're the whole reason that you are doing this job in the first place is because they
Mm,
have a product or an event or something that they need certain things out of. So, uh, learning that design is just a very inherently collaborative thing. Yeah,
yeah.
I learned a ton. Learned a
That's
ton. It was
awesome.
a great experience, and I use those skills every day
Yeah.
still. Uh, Even though
Excellent.
I draw more now, but
Right.
yeah.
Good. Okay. Excellent. Yeah. It sounds like a fulfilling job, at least.
Yeah, it was, and I'm still friends with some of those people.
That's
I've done freelance jobs thanks to recommendations from some of the people I worked with there still,
nice.
and so I still feel like I'm in a community with them, and I still live here in Columbus. Like I came here for that job, but the people I worked with and the people I met while I was here living in the city, like I've just grown a very close community. Me and my family
Nice.
have so building those relationships has been essential for us.
Excellent, excellent.
Mhm.
Okay, fantastic. I'd like to move forward a little bit in time to your some of your work with Lost Rest. I actually have looked through your portfolio, got a couple of items that I'd like to talk about. You've got a good mix of illustration and design projects and really beautiful work. I'd love
Thank
to
you.
hear. Yeah, no problem. I'd love to hear a little bit about some of them, like the light keeper, for instance. What inspired this project? What was your creative process like in developing that graphic novel?
I've been heavily inspired by narrative works, and the older I've gotten, the more I realize that all of the things that I'm most interested in media or art or culture
Mhm.
are story based world building things, whether it's video games or Star Wars or fantasy, or comics, which is has been a huge thing.
Mhm.
So I knew I was always going to do something in that regard. I left it all in the sketchbook forever. So since I was a kid, I was always, I don't know, inventing characters and worlds, and then sometime in my early 30s, I guess I started drawing this character who ended up becoming what is the light keeper. And it was really just about the visuals at first. I just like the look of this uh, traveling wizard kind of looking guy. And I was subconsciously taking inspiration from things that I had definitely seen before. Like some people have pointed out, there's a character there's a character in this cartoon called Over the Garden Wall who has like a conical shaped hat and has a similar silhouette, I guess. Uh, there's there's this comic from this artist called Mobius, called Arzak. Here's
Mhm.
Arzak, and he has a conical, like,
Oh, yeah.
he has like a similar silhouette also. So the visual of that silhouette kind of struck me, I guess, and I
Right.
was sort of playing off of that, but sort of updating it and putting this character in my own little world. Uh,
Right.
anyway, so uh, eventually I knew this character was going to end up in a story of some kind, and the
Mhm.
opportunity. There was a Creative South coming up, and I wanted to have something new to show at it because Creative South is my hometown design conference. It's where like all of my creative peers come to see. Now that I'm a vendor there, they can come to see like what I have that's new, and uh, so I just wanted to have something new to present. And I thought it's time to do the book. Like we have to make something out of this. So the
Yeah.
scale of it did grow since I conceived it, but the way I went about constructing it was very stream of consciousness kind of. Uh, I
I
was
see.
writing the story in pictures without really any dialogue in my head.
Right.
And I just knew I wanted to set this character on a journey, and through the process of writing, figure out what he can do. Like, what is he doing? Are his? I knew that he had some sort of magical abilities or something like that, and I knew that his this light source that is contained in his lantern, I knew that that was the source of his abilities, whatever they were. I just didn't know. I didn't know beyond that what I was going to do with it.
Right.
But I had all this imagery in my head, and I had sketchbooks from the past filled with stuff that I ended up putting in the book, like this shadowy figure that he confronts
Mhm.
towards the end of the book, and things like that. Um, but I don't know, having the having the guts to sort of put these like half baked ideas into the final book. I
Yeah.
guess that is where like Mobius that I showed you just now, that Arzak book, he it's also a wordless comic book. It's in a different sort of format, but it's like a wordless comic book that he writes about how he constructed the story in a esoteric, like metaphysical sort of way, like just stream
Mm.
of consciousness, one panel after the other, without really thinking about where it was going next. And that's sort of how I approach this.
Right.
Uh, and then the format of the book, it was going to be just like a 20 something page, like floppy comic originally, but
Yeah.
it ended up being a book like this when
Wow.
I first decided to do like one panel uh, per page
Right.
to tell the story. Um, I don't know where that decision really came from. It might have just been it might have just been because Creative South was coming up and I needed to be able to do this faster. So like one panel is
Right.
faster to draw than multiple. But I
You
also
know,
just I like the impact of it too.
yeah, yeah. I was looking at
Um,
as you open that page. That's gave me a much better view of, rather than a small frame. I
yeah,
thought your
I need to
illustrations
do.
were really nice.
I think I should do a better job of like photographing it or something like that. I did a little Instagram video like flipping through it one time, like whenever I first got them. Anyway,
Right.
um, so I figured out that like, oh, I can tell this story
Yeah.
with like just one image per page. I've seen some books do that before. It's not like unprecedented. But what was unprecedented for me was the idea of having one panel per spread. And that came about because I was in Barnes and Nobles looking around because I was a little burnout and I was like taking a break. And I found this book. Oh, I wrote down what it was called. It's called it's called Bad Island by Stanley Donwood. Stanley Donwood is the artist who did a lot of the Radiohead album covers.
Oh,
That's
okay.
like what he's most known for. Uh, but he's also a fine artist in his own right. And he did this book that was formatted just like what I've done here. Like I already had all these, like the thing was mostly done at this time, and I had all these like single panels. But I saw that book, and it was like one, just like I have here, one panel per spread. So like each time you turn the page, you just see one panel, and it
Right.
kind of gives it a flip book sort of effect. And I
Hmm.
tried it with my book like digitally, and I like, ooh, I kind of like this, and it gave me an excuse to make a book with a spine because otherwise it I don't think I would have had enough images to have a spine. So I was like, this is it kind of completely transformed the project,
Yeah.
and I just sort of ran with it. Um, and
Awesome.
then later, like after I was already selling the book, some people told me this reminds me of this artist called Lind Ward, and Lind Ward was this guy who was publishing books in that similar format. They were woodcuts, but there was a wordless novel in one panel per spread, just like I have here. And this was in like 1929 was his first time publishing that.
Wow.
And then I looked into that even more, and he was inspired by even older books than that. Like 1919 was
Yeah.
the first one, the earliest date that I saw from this Dutch artist or some. I don't know. I don't know much about it, but I kind of
Wow.
want to learn. So I'm like unwittingly playing off of a very old tradition apparently, and I didn't know that.
That's
uh,
great.
but that's not to say it's going to be the only way I do things going forward. Lind Ward was famous for publishing like several of these books,
Right.
but he also did other things too. And I think even if I do stuff with this other character and I have other story ideas, this was like a great exercise in just getting some ideas, getting a story on paper in my way, and then expressing it in the most naturalistic way that it came to me.
Right.
So it's like the most me project that I could conceive right now, in at least for the time that I had to do it.
Right.
And somehow I'm still pretty happy with how it came out. So that's a good sign.
That is a good sign.
Uh, if I do more, I am going to do more stuff with this character, and I
Good.
have many ideas for how the world will expand. And I've through doing the book, I got more ideas about what a lightkeeper is and how the world works and stuff. So I'm
Awesome.
excited to get more projects done with that, and they'll probably be more conventional with dialogue and stuff like that. But
Right.
uh, this had to be done. Like if
Yeah.
this didn't get done, I don't know when or how I would ever have finally made a book. So that's kind of where I see me focusing more of my efforts in the near future is more narrative works like that. It's very exciting.
Excellent.
It's difficult, but it's very exciting. I enjoy it.
That's excellent. Yeah. I'm actually writing a book myself. Yeah, just I'm
That's
working with an
cool.
editor, and the story is now get this. Okay, it's a story about dragons, and it's for middle school kids, and it's
Mhm.
got an educational piece in it. So I've integrated four designers, real life designers, into the story: Paula Scher, Stefan Sagmeister, Chip Kidd, and Gail Anderson, and they're part of my
Wow.
story. And so it's basically dragons on a quest to save their kingdom, but they're learning about graphic design all along the way. I'm a
That is
designer. I'm gonna write a
amazing.
story about graphic design. What
Are
can
we
I say?
gonna see Polisher like riding a dragon or something at some point?
Something like yeah, something
I'm
like
excited. I'm
that.
excited.
And I got their thumbs up to put them in the story, so I'm good.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah.
That's amazing.
So If you're enjoying this video, please take a moment to hit that like button, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our future videos. Thank you. Now, thank you for talking about Lightkeeper. I'd actually like to hear about one other project in your portfolio, the Keep Well project. What was the inspiration behind the initiative, and how did you impact? I'm sorry, let me say that. How did it impact your approach to art and the community engagement during the pandemic?
Let's see. That came about because I don't know when lockdown started. Uh, I basically stopped doing creative output for a
Mm,
while. I think a lot of people did too. Um, After like a month of it, I had to take a break from social media, and it was just like a time of deep reflection, or maybe I was just ignoring the bad things that were happening. I don't know. All I
right,
know is I was like not doing creative things very much. I was off the internet pretty much, and I was just being thankful that I have a house
right.
with a backyard and kids who are safe.
Yeah.
And uh, and then the longer that went on, I knew eventually I was going to get back into it, but I knew it wasn't going to be the same anymore after that. And so I don't know. The words "keep well" just sort of started showing up in my sketchbook when I started back sketching. Because when I was sketching after all that time, it's sort of like I don't know. It seems like a lot of illustrators and designers had their own pandemic projects.
Yeah.
A lot of cartoonists did pandemic projects at the time, uh, and so it was just like that was all that was in the air, uh, and so that's just all that was in my brain at the time, and I just had to get it out. So the words "keep well" started popping up, and this letter form started showing up, and then other illustrations and ideas were happening, uh, and eventually, uh, my wife Holly had I don't remember how it came about, if we had a conversation about it, but she presented the idea of using some of this artwork to do something constructive.
Mhm.
And so our idea became to start a greeting card service.
Mhm.
And the greeting card service slash company, I guess, would be we set up a website and have some greeting card designs with keep well on them or something related to that. Basically, like feel good messaging, uh, or messaging to remind the viewer to keep well, like to keep
Right.
yourself well, to do well at keeping what's important to you. Uh, and so it's about mental health and physical health and
Right.
just general well-being.
Got
Um,
it.
and so putting that in a greeting card format, setting up a website, and when someone orders a card, it would be uh, there would be a card writing service that went along with it. So they would like type a message to a loved one in order in one of our cards,
Yeah.
and then my wife Holly, who has way better handwriting than me, would like handwrite out the message and send it to the person.
That is
So
cool.
for the person who ordered the card, and
Wow.
then the service aspect of it was for every card that the customer ordered, we would send another card, like a duplicate, for every one card that a customer ordered, we would send another card to a healthcare worker, someone who was
Uh,
on the front lines who maybe could use some words of encouragement
right.
uh, with one of these cards. And that's
Mm,
pretty much what we did. And I don't know. We didn't like market it super heavy. We didn't really spend any money on it except for buying printed prints of the cards.
Yeah.
Uh, but but it was pretty fulfilling for us, and it was a great thing to be doing a creative project together, doing something constructive together, and just getting ourselves back out there in a way.
So,
After a while of doing that, uh, when the pandemic started to die down a little bit, we switched gears to an adjacent uh, cause that we were particularly passionate about, which was to help care for foster families. We are friends with some foster parents who have adopted kids, like, and they have a lot of kids, and they need a lot of support all the time
yeah.
because they have limited resources, and not everyone can do this, and it's very difficult. And we're not in a position to be foster parents ourselves, but we just have a heart for these kids and the families who care for them. So
That's
we
awesome.
sort of switched gears after a while to send that duplicate card to a foster family,
Nice.
uh, and like have the same effect, but with that. But it was very short lived, and I think it was probably always going to be because we just didn't really have the resources to put into it that we would have liked. But the messaging of Keep Well and the idea and the branding of it even have stuck around in my work personally. I still sell some items that say Keep Well on them, or have the branding on it,
Nice.
or just have that messaging in mind. And we did do one project around the holidays that was all about um, maintaining mental health through the holiday season, which can be a time of great distress for many.
Right.
Uh,
Absolutely.
and that was really a really fun project. I'm very proud of how those illustrations turned out too. So we did daily posts all throughout that Advent season, sort of.
Hmm.
Um, and my wife like wrote out what each daily affirmations or tips or whatever for keeping yourself well through the season.
Right.
She like wrote something for each day of that, and I illustrated that, and
Hmm.
we just posted it on Instagram. And then we got some therapist friends of ours to chime in on towards the end to get some expert advice in there. Um, so that could still even turn into something in the near future. So sometimes we do talk about starting up something related to Keep Well.
Yeah.
Uh, but the fact that it's me and my wife doing it makes it really pretty special.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I was about to say that's an
Yeah,
awesome opportunity to work with your wife like that. Yeah.
yeah, and she's super talented herself too, as a writer and just as a person who uh, understands people. like
Yeah.
she's just a really naturally empathetic person, super super empathetic type of person. Has a big heart for people.
Oh,
And
that's
so
nice.
it wouldn't have none of that would have happened without her. It would have just stayed in my sketchbook as
Right.
some random ideas.
Right.
Uh, but doing something constructive like that really helped me get out of that funk
Got
personally
it.
too. So it was all good things.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Excellent. Now, this next couple of questions are more about kind of let's imagine we have some students that are just coming out of high school or just coming out of college and really just kind of need some guidance. And so I'm curious if you think that now you created Lost Rest as a brand, personal brand.
Mhm.
How important is it for designers to create a personal brand?
Oh, well, I would
Mhm.
say it's pretty important.
Okay.
I might be biased because maybe I just really like the idea of it, but
Right.
Uh, the most important thing is to be able to do the work. It depends on what you're trying to do, I suppose. If you're trying to get a full time in house job, uh, or something like that, then proving that you can just do the work really well and be a decent person, that's enough to get you the job right there. But if you are a freelancer, then absolutely personal branding is essential,
Hmm.
uh, because you're marketing your business. Um,
That's a really good distinction,
yeah,
actually. Yeah. So as for freelancers, it's definitely a strong um, selling point that
yeah,
you can create a brand for yourself,
but
right? As
it definitely doesn't hurt when it comes to, I don't know. I guess i- whenever you're typing out a resume and you're
yeah,
submitting to a design job, that you are doing personal branding. Like that
right,
is what that's like when if your resume looks like it goes with your business card and it looks like it goes with your online portfolio, which you need to have,
right,
that's personal branding. So even if it's really basic, that's what you're doing.
right,
Uh, so I guess in that sense, it is important to just make it look like you know what you're doing. It doesn't have to be the most creative brand ever or anything like that. But if you're a freelancer, then that's when it's, to me, especially important,
right,
because, like I said, it's marketing your business and you're trying to communicate what it is that's special about you that you have to offer,
right,
and communicate that with your visuals, your language that you're using, and the type of work you're putting out. Uh, and it's all part of what branding is.
right.
So yeah, it's
Absolutely.
important to understand it either way, even if you're not using it to its full potential. It's important to understand what branding is and how you can apply it to yourself to varying degrees.
Right.
Uh, yeah.
Got it.
Did
Excellent.
I answer the question? I'm
Yeah.
not
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you did a great job.
Thank
You
you.
answered it exactly as I would had hoped. Perfect.
Hey, thank you.
So we've actually made it right to the end of the show. And before I ask the last question, I just want to say, first of all, thank you again for being here, being a part of my show. And, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. I mean, when I first looked at your YouTube channel, I was really intimidated. I gotta say, because it was like the original channel that had like 60K
Right.
subscribers or something. I was like,
Oh,
whoa.
yeah.
And then I looked at some of your guests. I was like, whoa, what does he want me to be interviewed for? I don't. What do I have to offer compared to these people? But then my wife came and she was like, just say yes. Like I was
Just do
like,
it. Just do it.
yeah. Uh,
Well,
and
there's
I'm
a there's
really
a there's a story, there's a horrifying story behind that 60K number. And I'll tell
oh
you that. I'll tell you all about that if you want. If you want to hear about
yeah,
it.
I'm sure I was thinking about asking you, but I didn't know. I was like, he's probably like still reeling from that, like whatever that was.
Now
Uh,
I'll explain it all. I do have one last
uh,
question though, and then we can talk about that. But
sure, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So my last question is, what advice would you give aspiring designers and illustrators that are navigating their way through the industry in the beginning of their as they're coming out of school and getting into the industry? Do you have any pearls of wisdom for them?
Uh, the first pearl would just be don't give up because it's very easy to get discouraged if things aren't working out for some reason, like they were for me. And there were times when I definitely did feel discouraged and I was procrastinating and just feeling down. Uh, but I will say, having a great support system has been essential for me. So lean on anyone who loves you.
Yeah,
Lean on anyone who loves you, and I'm sure there's at least one. There's at least one out there. I love you.
you're right.
So
All right.
send me a message or something if you need some encouragement.
We're
Uh,
leaning on you, Joseph.
but so that's the first thing. Just
Yeah.
persevere. Don't give up,
Go ahead. Yeah.
and uh, you can do it. And then beyond that, um, I would just say be patient with yourself and really take the time to learn about yourself and what it is about you that you can offer this thing you're trying to do. And that will start setting you apart because setting yourself apart as an individual and as someone who's offering a voice that only you can, that's what's ultimately going to make you have longevity and have real value, no matter what is happening technology wise or what's happening in the industry.
Mhm.
As long as you are providing something of quality and that is true to you, I think that's always going to be valuable. So stick to your guns, be
Yeah,
patient, and like really take your time with yourself.
right.
Um,
Excellent.
just be you, man. Follow your heart.
Yeah.
Follow your heart.
Excellent. Once again, thanks a lot for being here. And I've had a great time talking to you and getting to know you. And thank you again for being a part of the show.
Thank you, David. You were awesome, and I love what you're doing. So keep doing it forever.
Absolutely.